You know, when you think about Russia's power over global energy, your mind probably jumps straight to oil and gas pipelines, right? But what if I told you there's another system, a hidden one, that's way more strategic, and that Moscow has been quietly building for decades? In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on a different kind of weapon, one that powers the modern world: nuclear fuel.
It really all boils down to this single number, 46%. That's how much of the world's uranium enrichment capacity Russia controls. Think about that. Almost half of all the processed nuclear fuel on Earth has to pass through Russian hands. This isn't just about market share. This is a strategic choke point. And once you understand it, a whole new geopolitical game comes into focus. So how in the world did Russia lock down such a commanding position? Your first thought might be, well, they must control all the mines, right? That they're just digging more uranium ore out of the ground than anyone else. But you know what? That's not where the real power is.
And this is the core of the whole strategy, the big reveal. Russia doesn't dominate uranium mining, it dominates the enrichment choke point. That distinction is absolutely crucial. See, anyone can dig ore out of the ground, but turning that raw rock into fuel that can actually power a reactor, that's a whole different ballgame. And the difference is just staggering. Take a look. On the left, you've got uranium mining. Russia has only about 6% of the global market. Lots of countries can do it. But then you look at the column on the right, enrichment. That is a high-tech, incredibly expensive process that very few players can manage. And in that arena, Russia is the undisputed king, with almost half the entire market.
So what exactly is enrichment? Well, the simplest analogy is it's kind of like making a strong spirit. The uranium you dig up is mostly an isotope called U-238, which, well, it doesn't really do much for generating energy. The good stuff, the fissile U-235, is only a tiny fraction. So enrichment involves spinning this material in thousands of centrifuges at insane speeds to separate and concentrate that U-235, making it potent enough to power a reactor. It's a technology that is intentionally kept rare for, obvious non-proliferation reasons.
And the organization at the very heart of this whole system? It's Russia's state-owned nuclear giant Rosatom. You have to understand, this is so much more than just a company. It's a direct instrument of the Russian state, and it has built a sprawling global nuclear empire.
Here's what makes Rosatom so uniquely powerful. It's totally vertically integrated. Western companies, they tend to specialize in just one part of the process. But Rosatom controls every single step, from owning the mines to running those world-leading enrichment plants, to manufacturing the final fuel rods and, get this, even building the power plants for other countries. It's a complete, all-in-one, cradle-to-grave nuclear package.
And this control doesn't stop at Russia's borders, not by a long shot. Through one of its subsidiaries, Rosatom has huge operations in Kazakhstan, which happens to be the world's #1 uranium producer. This creates this tangled supply web, where even uranium that isn't technically Russian can still have a hidden string pulling it back to Moscow.
Okay, so Russia has this incredible industrial machine. But how does that actually translate into real-world power and leverage? Well, this is where the strategy really starts to shine.
When Rosatom builds a nuclear power plant for a client like Turkey or Egypt or Hungary, it is not just a one-and-done construction deal. Oh no, it's the start of a relationship that lasts for decades. The contracts are designed to lock that country into buying Russian fuel, using Russian technicians for maintenance. Basically, it's a subscription service for the entire 60 to 80-year life of the reactor. It is dependency by design.
And this isn't just a problem for developing nations. Check out these numbers. Even after making huge moves to cut off Russian oil and gas, the European Union still got 38% of its enriched uranium from Russia. And American power companies, they were cutting checks to Rosatom for about $1 billion a year. This is a massive vulnerability sitting right at the core of the West's own energy security.
So after years and years of relying on this cheap Russian supply, the West is finally waking up to the huge strategic risk, and a real coordinated response has started to take shape, all aimed at one thing: rebuilding an independent nuclear fuel supply chain.
It happened in stages. First, in 2022, you had the G7 making a big promise. Then, a year later, that promise was backed up with some serious cash, over $4 billion pledged by the US and its key allies. But the real hammer dropped in May of 2024, when the US passed a law to actually ban Russian uranium imports. That sent a crystal-clear signal that the era of dependence was officially over.
And the market's reaction was immediate. I mean, look at this. U.S. domestic uranium mining jumped more than 10 times in a single year.
It just goes to show you that with the right political will, a comeback for Western production is absolutely possible.
But let's be realistic here. You can't undo decades of neglect overnight. Building a new enrichment plant isn't like building a new factory. These are multi-billion-dollar projects that take years and years. Most experts agree that even if everything goes right, full independence is still probably a decade away, maybe even longer.
And here's the final twist. Just as the West starts to grapple with today's dependency problem, a new, arguably even more critical challenge is already on the horizon. Because this isn't just about the fuel we need right now, it's about the fuel we're going to need for the future. Let me introduce you to HALEU. Think of it as high-octane nuclear fuel. It's a more powerfully enriched uranium that is essential for most next-generation reactor designs, especially those smaller, safer, and more efficient ones you hear about called small modular reactors. HALEU is, quite literally, the fuel of the future for nuclear power. And this brings us to the final, jaw-dropping piece of this puzzle. The source report could not be more clear on this. It says Russia currently holds a complete monopoly on commercially available HALEU. Not just a big market share, a monopoly.
Just let that sink in for a minute. The strategic implication is just enormous. It means that, while the West is spending billions and racing to catch up on today's fuel, Russia has already cornered the entire market for the fuel needed to power the advanced reactors that are supposed to be our future.
So this is so much bigger than just energy markets now. This is a strategic race against time. The ability of the West to build its own enrichment capacity, especially for this advanced HALEU fuel, is going to define its energy security and its geopolitical freedom for decades to come. The window to act is getting smaller and smaller. And the real question is, can it build a new system before it's locked into another one all over again?